Mr. Fantastic is another character that got a uniform for Marvel Future Fight's 6th anniversary, and this is a uniform that actually got changed during the mid-month update, which is why this video is kinda delayed. I was actually gonna put this video out the day before the WandaVision update came out, but then I got the patch notes and then I saw it was gonna be changed, and I was like, oh my god, now I have to record clips for this video again. So here I am. So in this video, we're gonna basically discuss what Mr. Fantastic, or rather the Maker, is what he's going by now, what he can do with this new uniform, how it changes him, and I'm also gonna be discussing a little bit the comparison between pre-buff Maker and post-buff Maker, because again, he did get a buff in the mid-month update. Now, this is the build that we're working with. It's not perfect, but I think it's pretty good-ish. We have crit rate almost maxed out. The crit damage could use a little bit of work, but you know, it's alright, I guess, for the purposes of what we're working with. We can also see that the uniform takes away his leadership passive and gives him a pure evil passive there, though he still retains a Fantastic Four passive, so that's nice as well. It's not a passive, it's an ability. What am I talking about? But yeah, this is kind of what we're working with, just so we have an understanding of what Mr. Fantastic's stats are when we take him into some content later on. I didn't really cheap out when it comes to the build also. As you can see, a lot of slots are amplified for Mr. Fantastic set, and I've been equipping Uru on him to try and get those stats maxed out. And though it could use a little work, I did put effort, you know, into trying to get his stats capped out. I will work on it later on, but again, just for the purposes of the video, those stats are what we're working with. I'm just showing it off here so that there's an understanding between me and the viewer with, you know, how Mr. Fantastic fares. We have a stage 6 overdrive set. Again, could be better, but it's alright. This is reasonable. I think when it comes to the custom gear that I have on him, this CTPF energy is pretty high end, which is why I think this Mr. Fantastic build is quite above average, because I don't expect too many people to have CTPs of energy on Mr. Fantastic, given that he wasn't exactly a great character before this update. And we're also rocking a heroic uniform, though I don't have any of the options unlocked. It sucks when you're poor like me, can't afford all those other uniforms, but whatever, we push on, we're just doing it for the extra attack stat, and so that we can compare it to the Future Foundation uniform, which I also have at heroic. So that's the build that we're working with. Without further ado, let's take him into some content, make some comparisons, see how he fares. So do you remember when I said that the Future Foundation uniform may stand a chance against this new Maker uniform, given that the Future Foundation uniform has accumulation, which is removed for this new uniform? Maybe you don't, because that video wasn't too well viewed, I guess. But I did say that, and I am just completely wrong. This Maker uniform completely outclasses the Future Foundation uniform. Spoiler alert a little bit, but you can kind of see already in the results. This Maker uniform is pushing way ahead of the Future Foundation uniform. Look at that. The Future Foundation uniform is struggling to even get to the 50 bar mark when the Maker uniform is already pushed past it and is looking to beat that 40 mark. It's kind of nuts, and it should be the case because this Future Foundation uniform wasn't exactly great for Mr. Fantastic. It added a bit to his kit. You know, the accumulation did quite well for him because it's something that he needed. He needed that little bump in damage. But if he wanted to be like top of the meta, he did need something like the Maker over here, who manages to get Null into the next phase in about a minute or so. I considered actually omitting this part from the video because it was just such a mismatch, I think. This Future Foundation uniform doesn't stand a chance. Look at it, it's still trying, you know, it's still trying to chug on and stuff, while, you know, Mr. Fantastic with the Maker uniform's already working on the next phase. So yeah, so for those who have the Future Foundation uniform, who have Mr. Fantastic at tier 3, it's kind of no question, you definitely want to make the upgrade here, because considering that you've invested enough of it already, and you're gonna get such a big return on your investment here. I also want to make a comparison here between the Maker uniform pre-buff and post-buff. See, while I was making the video pre-buff, I was actually going to say that this Maker uniform is incredibly disappointing, doesn't offer too much of an upgrade on the Future Foundation uniform, and you can kind of see that here, because post-buff, this Maker uniform is something that is completely different. It's a whole new beast. And I'm quite happy that that's the case because I was actually prepared to kind of rant in the old version of this video. I was gonna be like, I just wasted money, basically giving Mr. Fantastic the tiniest of upgrades. So I'm glad that they kind of noticed this. They acted very fast, giving him a buff during the WandaVision update, and I think the buff goes a long way really. You can kind of see here. Pre-buff Maker helps you clear Null Stage 2 4 seconds faster. Can you imagine? I paid 800 crystals to go 4 seconds faster. That would have been unacceptable. So I'm really glad that the mid-month buffs came in. The buffs basically cut 20 seconds off of the clear time here, which is kind of crazy and actually makes me feel like this uniform's pretty good now. I decided to throw in some Proxima gameplay just to add a little more content to the video as well. Though this may be a little bit of an unfair showcase, given that part of the new kit that Mr. Fantastic gets with this Maker uniform adds 65% all defense down. So as you'll see in this video, the Maker also completely outclasses the Future Foundation uniform against Proxima. And if it wasn't close against Null, the gap between the two uniforms is astronomical for World Boss Ultimate. You'll be able to see that the Maker is basically zooming through this stage while the Future Foundation Mr. Fantastic is kinda, just kinda having a bit of a rough time, shall we say, against what is supposed to be a rather simple stage to clear. I will say that maybe Mr. Fantastic's Future Foundation uniform does offer a little more protection given he has invincibility and immunity, but you can rectify that by learning how to play with the Maker uniform. Plus, the Maker uniform provides a heal for any mistakes you make. So there's really no reason you should be sticking with the Future Foundation uniform when this Maker uniform is out. Maker is able to get Proxima into that next stage, while Future Foundation Mr. Fantastic is really struggling here. Spoiler alert, he isn't even able to get him there without dying. We're just gonna move on and let the Future Foundation uniform rest in peace. Now we're going to discuss what exactly about the Maker uniform makes Mr. Fantastic so strong, but before I do, I just want to ask, does anyone want to see more Galactus content? I don't do it enough, again because it's only available for one day out of a whole week. I was just kind of getting tired of facing Null all the time, so I decided to go against Galactus. If people want to see more of that, do let me know in the comments and I'll try to record more Galactus content for future characters that come out. Back to Mr. Fantastic though, let's talk about the aspects of his kit that make him strong. His third skill has a 35% increase of all attacks for 10 seconds. His fourth skill is cancelable. That's important, we'll get back to it later when we discuss rotation. It also has a 65% all defense down that I mentioned earlier in the Proxima clear, as well as having an increase of all attacks and defenses by 40%. That's kind of a juicy buff, and you kind of want to have that before you land your proc. His fifth skill has ignore target's dodge rate by 40%, a 60% chance to penetrate barrier shield, all damage immune, immunity to all damage, and a built-in damage proc that increases damage for 50% for one attack. His tier 3 skill hasn't changed between uniforms, though I think it's still worth showing here in case anyone forgot what was on the description of that skill, and it's also worth pointing out his tier 2 passive, which now gives him skill damage in bonus damage, as well as a heal when he gets hit. So those are essentially the strengths of Mr. Fantastic's Maker uniform. Now given that that's the case, what's the ideal rotation for him for a damage proc? I'm glad you asked. Ideally, you want to do 3, cancel 4, cancel 5, and land your proc on the 5th skill. Now the 4, you want to delay the cancel a little bit so that he lands on the ground so that those tentacle things, arm things, I don't know what those are, but they're little tendrils that come out and add additional damage to the next attack that you do. So you want to delay it until he lands there and then transition into your 5th skill so you get all that damage on your proc. Now with the tier 3 skill, you want to do 3, cancel 4, cancel 5, cancel 6, so that you have the damage proc on the 5th skill land on your tier 3 skill. And that results in a lot of damage because that tier 3 skill hits very hard. It always has hit very hard. It's just that Mr. Fantastic now has a great kit that allows him to deal damage even without that tier 3 skill, which is, again, why this uniform is pretty damn good. Now, while this uniform is pretty good for Mr. Fantastic, I don't want to oversell its value too much because I think compared to other characters in the game, this uniform isn't too impressive. We'll get into specific comparisons with other characters at the end of this clear, but I just don't think that Mr. Fantastic with this Maker uniform is gonna be like one of the best damage dealers in the game. Not by a long shot, I think. And that's me using him right now with the CTP of energy. But as you can see in this Galactus clear, we're doing pretty great. We're in the lead in terms of damage. You know, we're getting this done, and Mr. Fantastic is perfectly capable of this kind of content. So, I mean, if you're just looking at Mr. Fantastic on his own, this is a great uniform for him. It definitely bumps him up a significant level from where he used to be. So we do finish Galactus here, and we're gonna check the damage numbers that we have right now. We have around 45 million damage in around 3 minutes of clear time. Now we're going to compare Mr. Fantastic's DPS as the maker against Galactus with some characters who are around that DPS mark in my records. And as you can see, there are a lot of characters that are able to get better or similar results to the maker with more cost-efficient builds. You can see Beta Ray Bill and Ghost Rider are able to hit more DPS than the maker can with 180 procs, 140 procs, no CTPs. Thor could possibly surpass the maker if he did have a CTB of energy as well. It's kind of crazy also that the Immortal Hulk uniform is as close as it is to the maker, given that Hulk is more PvP based in terms of his strengths. But as you can see, the buff that Mr. Fantastic gets from upgrading from the Future Foundation uniform to the maker uniform is quite massive. Almost 100k DPS increase. So that kind of supports my point when I say that the maker uniform is a great uniform for Mr. Fantastic, but may not necessarily be a great uniform when taking into consideration all the characters in Marvel Future Fight. I also want to note something important when looking at how the Maker's DPS compares to other characters for Galactus. The Maker isn't able to take advantage of certain buffs that heroes like Ghost Rider and Thor can because, yeah, he's not a hero. So characters like Nick Fury, Phil Coulson, the Maker isn't able to take advantage of those buffs, and that does hold him back for, game modes like this. Though, for fairness sake, I did compare the Maker and Mr. Fantastic's Future Foundation uniform against Galactus with the same team up, which was Thing and Taskmaster. I think a big factor that will decide the value of the Maker uniform, which I wasn't able to look at in the video, is how he compares to other combat villains, given that this uniform does make Mr. Fantastic a combat villain. So how he stacks up against Apocalypse and Namor will, I think, ultimately decide how much value this uniform has. But just DPS-wise, looking at how much damage he deals, I don't think he's a necessity. He's probably like an A tier or B tier character when it comes to like a lot of the tier 3s in the game. I've seen some people say that he's like super amazing now or something, and he is pretty good. I'm not gonna deny that, but I just don't think, I'm not in any rush to be like, oh my god, you guys should tier 3 Mr. Fantastic now with this uniform. No, I don't think it's anything like that. If you like Mr. Fantastic, this is a pretty good time to like invest in him because he's got a pretty updated uniform that makes him, strong enough, I think. And if you had Mr. Fantastic and you had him at tier 3 and you were a little disappointed, this is a big upgrade that I do recommend that you get. For anyone else though, I don't know. I'm a little hesitant to recommend it. He's still pretty strong though, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's a native tier 2. He has to be strong. It's just that when you consider the investment you have to put in order to get him, that's where the questions kind of arise for me. He is fun to play. It's really satisfying to see the bars go down when he hits that tier 3 skill, but I feel like you could invest your resources in better characters. That said though, this is still a good uniform, and if you do invest in it, you do end up getting a pretty good character out of it. A very solid damage dealer and a great combat villain. I don't know, that's just me though. Those are just my impressions of this uniform. So, what do you think of Mr. Fantastic's Maker uniform? Have you gotten it? Do you have him at tier 3? Do you have a CTB of energy on him also? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Maybe I am completely wrong about this one. I am concerned that I might be wrong because I have seen quite a lot of people say that he's really good. But it's just, I don't know. I can't really refute what I see in my tests. So, yeah. Again, do let me know. I hope that this video gave you some insight into Mr. Fantastic's power level, how strong he is, how to play him, etc. And as always, thank you so much for watching.